All right, I want to call the meeting to order. I think we have a quorum and let's have pledge of allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'm going to read the land acknowledgement. The Pima County Public Library acknowledges the sovereignty of Native nations and acknowledges the 22 federally recognized indigenous tribes of the state of Arizona and those who inhabit Pima County. We honor the vast and often unrecognized contributions and sacrifices of indigenous people and are conscious of the ongoing experience of inequality and political invisibility. In partnership with Native nations, PCPL advocates for full access to its educational, informational, and recreational resources. Welcome, everybody. And it's lovely to see our new director. Welcome. And if you can watch and see if there's anybody with a hand raised, just let me know, but we'll have call to the audience. Is there anybody who would like to speak? And do we have a motion for approval of the minutes of June 5th? Second. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
I'm gonna abstain.
You are.
Yes.
One abstention. All right, let's go around the table because we do have some new faces, and let's start back here. You want to introduce yourself?
Hey, Steve Holmes. I'm one of the deputy county administrators in the county. Everyone, I think most of you have met.
Sharon Pulse. Isoletta, FEMA Library Foundation.
Oh, next. Cam Fuentes, new board member,
Which district?
District 5.
Ana Sanchez, District 5.
John Halliday, District 1.
Anthony Batchelder, Deputy Director of Finance and Facilities.
Laura Lopez, your secretary.
I'm Denise Lane, Deputy Director of Public Services and Customer Experience.
Hi, I'm Anissa Porta, Deputy Director of Community Engagement.
Scott Lukomsky, District 1.
Yeah, Diaz, District 2, Vice Chair.
Marianne O'Neill, District 2, Chair for now.
Holly Schaefer, Community Relations Manager.
Renee Divinity.
Look on vacation, I'm not back here. Renee, the marketing manager.
Lindy Carmen, Library Services Manager.
Paulina Guillermo, Library Services Manager.
Monique Bennett, Library Services Manager. Alina Rowe, Library Service Manager, Community Engagement. Vicky Lafleur, Library Services Manager.
Thank you. Welcome, everybody.
We're going to be quick on those names.
Yeah. Do any of the board members have anything they want to say about the last couple of months? Have you been at any events or you want to mention visiting a branch or programs?
Well, I checked out the Mega Mania event. That was really interesting. I didn't realize there were going to be so many people in costumes there. Surprised by that. Yeah, but I think it seemed pretty well attended. I'm not sure what the expectation was, but
I think it's very popular.
it seemed like it, and it was a wide range of people, young kids and families and stuff with students.
I've been at Martha Cooper a lot and they are busy and full all the time. The parking lot is always full, so. Well used.
Yes.
Anybody else have any?
I've been to Valencia and South Tucson for library events for meetings, but
Those branches are pretty busy all day long. So.
Same here at World Valley University. I think they have over 1,000 kids on the summer reading.
Yeah. Very impressive. Do we have any reports from the Friends?
Is Penny here? Is that Penny?
Penny, did you want to say anything?
Yes,
Okay, we barely can hear you.
I got it. We're good. I think we, I think you can go.
Every time we use it, the volume is down, we have to turn it back up.
can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, I don't know why my camera's not on, but you don't have to see me, I guess. It's fine. I just wanted to let you know that there's still time to buy tickets for our Whodunit fundraiser, which is a Harry Potter at the Booths at Reflections on August 29th. It's a 3-hour dinner and mystery theater and prizes and everything. And it any of that money that we get in, of course, then will mean that we spend less money and that we can give more money to the library, which is what our fundraisers are actually about. And talking about money, we have budgeted this year for $230,000 as a minimum to give to the library in our 4 quarterly payments as we usually do. I know this is slightly down from our 260 of last year, but we've had some real building issues and are trying to keep up with it. Plus a pretty flat economy that we have been seeing. We start our sales again in September, and our first sale for members at a half price is on September 6th and 7th. We invite any of you to either become a member and come to it, or come next week to our community sales on September 12th through 15th. And I guess that's all we have to say, and welcome to the new director.
And Penny, have you, how is the search for a new director for the Friends going along?
Okay, we're pretty much in the infancy of it because Libby has put off until December her retirement. So in September and October, we will be starting and hopefully having a recruiter, and we'll have a short job description out and post the job. So we hope to get somebody by December.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any
questions?
Did you have anything you wanted to say?
Always. So I wasn't here in June. I'm not sure what Karen shared in June, but at the end of June, we sent the rest of our commitment to the library, and that was for the mobile hotspots. So we built everything that we committed to for fiscal year 25. We have an approved budget, which provides for a slight increase of what we plan to do for the library over last year. We, in addition to the Career Online High School scholarships and the mobile hotspots, we also provided 4 scholarships to library staff who are working on their master's degree in information library sciences. Each of those 4 individuals got the $2,000 scholarship. And those went to Cynthia Ramirez with Santa Rosa Library, Jessica Salas with Wheeler Taft, Sarah Evans with Woods Memorial, and Vivian Lynn with Extreme Columbus. So we're really happy. Very, very happy. And if I could just please give a shout out to library staff that had a chance over the summer, to work with Holly and Renee and Beth and Anthony. They're so helpful. And Renee and Beth in particular are really helping us get some more awareness, some more with the staff, library staff, about what the foundation does. So thank you to all of them. They're always great. Thank you.
Okay, new business. The social service needs analysis final report. And is this Beth?
Yes.
Welcome, Beth.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I really appreciate the opportunity to be here with you today. I'm going to share my screen. Give me just a second. Okay, hopefully you can see that. So I'm going to tell you just a little bit about the needs assessment process that I did and then what the findings and recommendations were. But just briefly, I want to tell you about myself and then also just give you some context so that you understand what's happening in libraries really nationally and internationally that we also see there in Pima County. But I'm Dr. Beth Waller. I'm a consultant, researcher, and trainer who works with libraries all across the country and internationally around strategies for supporting the social service related needs of patrons, improving organizational culture, and reducing staff stress, burnout, and trauma. I have a book called Creating a Person-Centered Library that is out. I also co-host a podcast called Surviving the Stacks, which is about stressors that face library workers everywhere. Just so you have that context, social service related needs of library patrons are going up all across the country and even in lots of other countries around the world. And we specifically see in libraries everywhere, and especially public libraries, high levels of homelessness or people who are who have unstable or unsafe housing. We see high rates of mental health challenges in libraries, substance use, and in some libraries we see high rates of overdoses that are happening, and lots of poverty-related needs. And we're seeing these needs really go up in library patron populations because social services are being cut everywhere, resources are being cut, that social safety net is really disappearing in many of our communities, and libraries are really the last free public space that exists, and they're picking up the slack where other things are sort of failing or falling apart. And in libraries, this is causing a lot of stress and strain because many times staff are not trained to deal with the levels of needs that are happening in their library. We know that lots of patrons are actually coming in and it's impacting their information needs. So they're asking for help with these kinds of social service related needs directly from staff. In other cases, they're not necessarily asking for help, but these sorts of needs impact their behavior in the library. And these needs have been increasing since the beginning of the COVID pandemic, and behavioral incidents and violence and aggression and incivility have also all been increasing since the beginning of the pandemic back in 2020. And although the frequency of the needs varies based on where a library is situated, we see these same patron needs in urban, suburban, and rural libraries. They look a little different sometimes based on the resources and the community context, but the same needs are happening in lots of different libraries and communities right now. Libraries are desperately trying to meet these changing needs. And so we do see libraries everywhere that are doing things like creating specific librarian roles for outreach or community collaborations or for working with specific patron populations. We see libraries trying to offer specialized training to their staff on things like boundaries, self-care, trauma-informed practices, mental health, homelessness, how to administer Narcan, things like that. We see libraries trying to meet the needs of the public with social services. So lots of libraries are having resource fairs or adding health and wellness focused programming or using library space for support groups or telehealth or for other community partners to come in. And many libraries are collaborating with nurses, community health workers, peer navigators, and social workers. So PCPL contracted with me late last year to help with this, to do a needs analysis of the library, and to make recommendations for potential social service related focused services or programs that could help address the current needs, and to then provide assistance with implementation of the recommendations pending whatever available resources the library had to implement those recommendations. So the needs assessment started last fall with a survey of all PCPL staff. Then I did interviews with key administrators and staff. I did a review of branch usage and incident related data. And I came in December and did a tour and observations of select library branches. And the whole process was guided by a core group of PCPL administrators and the vulnerable populations team. So it was those two teams that gave me the names of the people to interview, as well as suggested the specific branches to visit. So just briefly, I'm going to go over sort of the highlights of the different phases of the needs assessment. There were 295 staff who participated in the survey. That represented just under 63% of the staff at that time. From what staff reported, the largest unmet patron needs that were happening in the library were housing, mental health, needing access to or education about technology, hygiene, substance abuse, employment, financial needs, food insecurity, and medical and health related needs. Staff were then asked which patron needs were causing the most stress. So they were asked which ones were the most frequently, which were the most frequent unmet needs, but also which were causing the most stress. 75% or just under 75% of staff were feeling a lot of stress caused by patrons with mental health problems. Just below that at 62% were patrons with substance abuse problems. Then you can see it goes down just a little bit for behavioral problems, then hygiene, and starts dropping a little bit there. But staff were feeling pretty highly stressed by patrons with mental health, substance abuse issues, behavioral problems, as well as some other complex needs. They were asked who should provide these kinds of services to patrons. So should it be staff, librarians, trained library staff? Should it be social workers? Should these needs be met through collaborations? And they were asked to check as many as applied, so whatever they thought. And you can see in this chart that 27, almost 28% thought that trained librarians or other library staff could provide these kinds of services to support people with these social service related needs. Over 3/4 of staff wanted a social service professional hired by the library to help with these things. Over 90% wanted partnerships with external community agencies to help with these kinds of needs. And only 6% said none of the above, that these services or programs shouldn't be provided in or by the library. So most staff thought the library had some responsibility to help with these kinds of needs and could do so through sort of a combination of depending on existing community partners, hiring somebody who would focus on social services in the library, and then some trained library staff. Staff were asked what they most wanted help with, and these were the themes that came out of their responses. These were open-ended responses. So they wanted help making referrals to social service providers. They wanted help with people who needed assistance filling out applications. They wanted on-call help when patrons were in crisis or were escalated, or somebody who could help with de-escalation. They wanted help building effective partnerships that could offer programs in the library, provide services directly to patrons, or do outreach in the library to people who would be eligible for those services. They wanted an updated and easy to use resource list or database, and found the current resources really kind of overwhelming and difficult to use in the moment when somebody needed help. They wanted somebody to help build relationships and trust with patrons so that patrons were more likely to go to that person when they needed help in the future. They wanted somebody who could check on patrons and ensure that they were getting what they needed. They also wanted training for themselves so that they had skills to meet the needs that were happening in the library. In the more rural parts of the county, they wanted help adding services where there are none, because there weren't places to partner with or refer people in the more remote areas. They wanted on-site social service help for nearly all PCPL locations. So almost every location was asking for somebody in their location who could help. They also wanted help reducing barriers to patrons who need social services, because they recognized a lot of barriers in the local community when people do need services. They also wanted help pushing back on other community services and really setting boundaries about the library's role and advocating for additional programs elsewhere that could meet patrons' needs. So they wanted somebody with the library really at the table for conversations to try to advocate for additional services to be added there in the county. They also wanted help debriefing after crisis. They wanted coaching and support about how to work with people with a variety of needs. And many of them said, please help us stick to our role as information providers. So they wanted somebody who could respond to social service related needs so that they could really focus on providing information, what they were trained to do. Then those were the highlights from the survey. I did interviews, as I mentioned, with 15 key administrators or staff who are on this list. These individuals were recommended by either the administrative team or the vulnerable populations team as having some sort of inside knowledge about social service needs and how they impact work there at the library. The themes that came out of these interviews: are on this slide and the next one. So what came up over and over in these interviews is that PCPL has offered many different services and programs to attempt to address patron social service related needs and improve support for staff. And I would echo that. Your library has really been on the cutting edge with these kinds of partnerships and collaborations and has already done a lot of different things to respond to staff needs as well as respond to patron needs that are happening. Also from the interviews, many of the people that were interviewed really thought there would be a lot of benefits to having an on-staff or otherwise in-house professional program that would be managed by the library. So the library has had partnerships before to try to address these needs, but sometimes when we have partnerships with others, we're sort of at the mercy of that other organization and changes in funding or changes in priority for that organization. So many people wanted the library to actually be able to add someone that's on site and in-house so that they weren't as vulnerable to these sort of changing conditions outside the library as they have been. They also said that PCPL is in need of additional support for both patrons and staff related to serving patrons with social service related needs, and specifically about patrons with mental health, substance use, homelessness, and severe poverty. Those were the kind of 4 top needs that the people who were interviewed felt like needed some additional support. And this group of interviewees felt like the majority of staff were perceived to be open to and welcoming of an on-site social services program or provider. They also talked a lot about the varied needs across branches and how diverse the different branches and locations are in the PCPL system, and that any social service related program that was designed to serve the library had to be able to adapt and be responsive to the varying levels of need across the system. Also from these interviews, it was very clear that interviewees did not think that PCPL should become a social services organization. So they wanted to really distinguish, even though they were adding or interested in adding some sort of social services person on staff, it really was to still help the library maintain its primary role of being the connector to and not the provider of social services. They also thought that there were other strategies that could be helpful. They were asking about other strategies that could be helpful besides just hiring or trying to contract or add a social services person or program. And there was really wide agreement that there needed to be some clarity added around boundaries around the library's role and scope with people who have these kinds of needs, which again is a really common challenge that's happening in libraries everywhere, because the boundaries around what libraries can and can't do are really fuzzy. And many times, the expectations for libraries keep expanding and expanding and expanding. So the people who were interviewed really wanted some help setting boundaries and felt like there needed to be some boundaries around the role and scope of the library with people who had social service related needs. So after these interviews, I did visits at 10 different locations. These were the locations that were visited. They were the higher needs locations in the system. And during these visits, I met with 45 different staff. And in some locations, I was able to meet with community partners who also were there during the visit to talk to these staff and community partners about the needs, the community context. I toured all of the facilities and really observed some of the interactions and some of what was happening in the locations at that time. The themes that came out of my visits and the conversations I had. So again, most staff are very committed to and are already attempting to try to meet social service related needs of their patrons. And they're already using so many different strategies to try to address these needs. And again, your library really is on the cutting edge with these kinds of collaborations and programs already. Staff really wanted to feel more skilled and competent at working with patrons in crisis. It came up very frequently that they didn't feel like they had the skills they needed when people were in crisis, and they described lots of incidents that were happening where they felt very overwhelmed, and they were asking for more training. They also wanted some open time to talk to others about how they handle different situations, because in libraries there are so many different sort of gray area situations that happen that people have to make decisions on the fly and handle them in the moment. Many staff reported feeling a lot of pressure, both internally, sometimes it was coming from themselves, and also externally for the library to be all things to all people. And they did want clarity around guidelines for their roles. Public-facing employees wanted additional support for patrons' social service related needs. They also commented in these visits about the diverse and varied needs among the different branches and wanted any program added to really be able to adapt to the different needs. And branches really hoped and asked that central administration might be able to help provide some centralized support around things like partnerships or a resource database or things like that. And then the last slide from the visits, staff really appreciated the existing strategies that already had been implemented by PCPL to add support for their roles. They talked a lot about strategies that had already been used and felt really grateful for those. Partnerships with existing social service providers they mentioned lots of those. Those are very appreciated and viewed as beneficial, but in many cases they wanted more. They wanted more partnerships or more time for partners, more help in the library. The majority of staff were really open to having an on-staff or on-site social services program. And at the visits, it came up frequently that they wanted somebody to consult with in the moment when somebody's in crisis. They wanted someone on call who could come to a location when there was a patron in crisis, because area crisis response tends to be slow, especially in an emergency or in a crisis. They wanted somebody who could help create and maintain a streamlined database of resources, and they wanted somebody who could help negotiate partnerships or collaborations that might be able to benefit multiple branches. And they specifically said if PCPL adds somebody in this kind of role, the person in the role matters as much, if not more, than the actual role. So they talked a lot about needing somebody in their locations who could build rapport with people easily, who could build relationships with patrons so that patrons felt comfortable approaching them when they had needs or felt really vulnerable. So that's a quick overview of the needs assessment. The recommendations that came out of that, I do recommend that your library consider adding some on-staff or on-site social services help. And I know it depends a lot on resources, but if possible, I would recommend 2 different positions. One that is really internally focused on staff, one that is externally focused on building partnerships and serving the community and serving patrons. And that these 2 people may be able to expand what they can do by building partnerships with the local university, potentially building partnerships with the local peer support programs, but there are other ways to try to expand services that 1 or 2 people may be able to do. And whatever happens, there has to be some work to make sure that we sort of manage expectations about what an on-site social services provider can and can't do in the library. It is not realistic to have somebody in each location at this time providing on-site support. Again, there are some things that can be done to expand coverage across locations, but we have to sort of manage expectations about what can be done, especially as a program starts small and then potentially grows in the future. For the internally focused position, that person I would recommend focus on staff support and debriefing, staff training and group consultation, any wellness focused initiatives or programming for staff, and then work directly with the trauma-informed care team that already exists there at PCPL. The externally focused position, I would recommend that person or that position really focus on building partnerships and collaborations that can benefit multiple sites, help plan programming and services that can be sort of instituted across branches, develop a community resource database or tip sheets to help staff know sort of how to respond when people approach with certain needs. This position would collaborate with leadership and security regarding policies and practices around behavioral incidents, help define boundaries about the services with the, internally and externally, and work directly with the vulnerable populations team. If PCPL can only add 1 position, and it is frequently the case that a library can start with 1 and then sort of plan to scale up in the future as resources allow, that second externally focused position is the priority, although I would add 1 caveat that I think staff training should also fall then under that particular person. So that's an overview of the process. I know we're also working on other things like staff training at this time, and I've been meeting with some members of the library right now to sort of plan those next steps for clarifying and providing some training and support to staff in the meantime. But you've got my contact information here. If you have questions, I'm going to stop my screen share in case there are any questions right now.
Anybody? I'm just curious as to your opinion about how is PCPL doing in relation to other library systems that you've worked with?
Yeah, so PCPL is already really progressive in a lot of ways with the trauma-informed care team for staff and some of the responses that have been built in to try to support staff with crises and high-stress incidents. The nurses program that existed before, the current partnerships right now with nurses, with the community navigator. Really, the library is doing a lot of things. The vulnerable populations team, the Our Space program to try to help, involve people and help people feel included in the library. There are a lot of things happening now that are really sort of ahead of the curve compared to other urban libraries that are struggling with some of the same challenges. So it's in a good place. There's a lot of good work to build on.
There's one over here.
Might want to ask the question. Go ahead. Beth, I'm curious, as you were doing interviews or researching, did you come across any data or information about the organizations, either government or nonprofits, providing behavioral health and mental health services in Pima County? And do they have capacity that we're not tapping? Or do they have wait lists and are facing staffing shortages? What is their situation?
Yeah, that's a good question. So that was not part of this specific project. I did not check into capacity of local organizations. That would be a good sort of next step, is to see about partnerships. However, one of the things that comes up really frequently. So I work with a lot of libraries that start adding these services through partnerships, but wind up moving a position in-house because partnerships, there are some pros and cons, to each model. But with partnerships, the library has a lot less control over what that looks like and what that role does in the library. And in many cases, the partnerships don't quite, it's a good place to start sometimes, but it doesn't quite fulfill the need that the library has. So I think it's worth exploring there in the local county. And it is a way to expand services. So what I was recommending is that PCPL consider hiring somebody whose role it is then to really build out those partnerships when possible, so that can expand what one person can do, because there are sometimes community partners like you have now. There are community partners who come once a month, once every other week for a couple hours. And there is sometimes room to build more of those partnerships and more of those kinds of relationships that can help. But it is beneficial to have somebody in-house in the library whose role it is then to oversee and coordinate all of that.
Other questions? I just am curious, is there any system that you think is doing a really exceptional job of serving this population?
Yeah, well, everybody has their challenges, right? It's a challenge. It's a really common challenge. And again, I think there are things that are happening there in Pima County that really are good examples for others about what can be done to serve the population. I know there still are unmet needs and many, many challenges that are happening. And I'm glad to connect somebody with the library with some others, because I think often there are bits and pieces that can be sort of borrowed from different libraries or systems that can inform what might work in your context.
Well, I think your report was excellent. I'm really happy that the library had you come in and take a fresh look at what the situation is here. And like you said, the situation here is similar to libraries throughout the United States and probably throughout the world. But I think you really did a great job of checking with the library staff, library management. And you've come up with some practical recommendations that I think the library should really look into implementing. And one thing we've talked about over the past year is having a robust planning process for PCPL. And I hope that if we do get to that, that your recommendations will be worked into that as a plan for how PCPL is going to take on these challenges in the future. But I really like your recommendations. Great job. Just to get back to Mary Ann's question, are there particular libraries though in the United States, like large systems that you think we might want to model ourselves after? Or is that putting you on the spot, which I don't want to do, but.
Yeah, well, I'm happy to pull something together and send it that might have some recommendations for others that you could talk to, and specifically like what pieces to explore that they're doing in those other areas. And I do want to reiterate that nobody has the magic wand to this right now. Like there is no magic solution, and what it takes typically is a combination of trying to address social service related needs, trying to provide support to staff, and training so staff are able to respond to what's happening in their day-to-day work. And also thinking about overall trauma-informed approaches. So even when we do have to incorporate security, which again is a growing, more and more libraries are adding security personnel to help with things that are happening. But we want to make sure that those are security professionals that are trained in preventing escalation and de-escalating and responding to people in crisis. And so it really takes sort of a partnership between trying to address the needs that people have, trying to address the skills that staff have so they can respond to things, and then using just a kind of a comprehensive trauma-informed approach across the library.
We use your report as a benchmark right now. How would we look in the future to measure our success in terms of improving?
Yeah, I think that's a good strategy to use this sort of as a baseline at this point in time, and then to measure how things change over time as different strategies are implemented. And I know like the report was specifically focused on social services professionals or adding on staff support with social services, but I am also working right now with a team to develop some training to help set some consistent expectations for staff, to provide support for staff with some of the skills that they were asking for. So we are trying to also look at other strategies that can be helpful across the library.
And or Marisa, did you have anything you want to add to this?
I think I worked most closely with Beth, in addition to Lindy and husband working with Beth and Beth and Beth's library also did some work on this. We're taking her considerations into account when we're doing some restructuring up here. Most excited about the code of conduct response guidelines that we got started a couple of years ago, and I wasn't even on the admin team when we started with these, and we're gonna actually, and it kind of got stalled out, and that's helping to look at those again, retool them for trauma-informed lens, and then we're gonna do some training in the fall related to that. So it's been a while since our staff have had some situational training around incident response. So I think those are the ways that we're really, and we're also doing a little bit of staff structuring and looking at, as Marisa's team, we're doing a little bit of restructuring between our teams, and we talked about that before a little bit about where some of the work is going to live in community engagement and where the work of public services is. And when I talk about public services switching gears towards staff training and development, a lot of it is with a lens through this. It's like sort of customer service training is also incredibly important to me. So we're kind of going for a twofer because I think they're both really related. So Lindy and Pal on my team are really helping us spearhead that. So it's been great working with Beth.
I do like the recommendations
about 2 staff, internal and external. The external being the priority. And I think this person, as they work on, looking at what resources are available in the community and working on partnerships, it's important also that we educate those organizations on what the library does, because often they don't understand the role of the library. So, that's how we end up getting, these programs and folks, coming in and bringing, their patrons and not understanding that they still have a role with, these folks once they're here in the library. So just, educating those organizations at the same time as looking at how we can partner, I think would be really good.
I also want to speak to it's really difficult to compare us to other systems because social services are so vastly structured so differently between state by state, county by county. And I think we all know that. Yeah, community by community. And I think we have some real hurdles with the fact that a lot of our social services are privatized and those organizations change from month to month. And so the CWD, Community Workforce Development, in another department in the county, those partnerships with the resource navigators have been really, really critical in helping with that work. And then I think, folks like Lindy and I actually met doing similar work. We both have the social services lens to a lot of our work in public libraries. And we met before we were even worked together in the library system at a conference talking about similar things, like going to each other's stuff. So I think, having a special blend of library and social service lens to the work and understanding that is going to be a critical piece to success. I'm excited about the ways that we're going to do things.
Can I just say quickly, I do think it's difficult to compare. When you were asking me about other libraries, it's difficult to compare because every library system is so different. The community needs are different. The community organizations and resources are structured differently. And so it's hard to take what one library does and do it somewhere else. But I would, I would say that I do think there is a benefit in having something in-house, especially as we go into these next few years. We are expecting to see more and more cuts to funding for community services and community resources. And so it's going to get harder and harder for libraries that do depend solely on community partners because those community partners are going to be more and more overwhelmed. So there still is, I think, a benefit to having somebody in-house who can help with these things specifically on behalf of the library and work collaboratively with those community partners.
Anybody else?
I got one question.
Mhm.
I bet I'm one of the new advisory board members, but the three things that came to mind as I was listening to your report, which was amazing. But the three things I didn't hear too much about was, going back to the point of library systems being different. Extreme heat, extreme weather in Arizona compared to extreme cold weather up northeast. And you definitely want to hear a little bit more about that. Also, just our relationship with the border, immigration issues, and also indigenous communities. Those are cultural elements that sometimes we just kind of gloss over. The last piece of that is accessibility, as that relates to your report, and what do these experts bring to the table in helping to include that in the conversation, because the intersectionality in all of that is incredibly important to consider. So did you in your findings, did you find any kind of conversations around that?
Well, that is, so I had to try to make this really short for this meeting, but that piece that came up over and over about the diverse and varied needs of the different locations is what you're talking about in terms of the indigenous communities that are served, the immigrant communities that are served. Some communities are very high poverty, low resources. And so whoever is hired, if you do decide to go in that direction, whoever is hired really has to be somebody that is able to understand the different communities that are served in all of the different branches of PCPL. It can't be a one size fits all thing where there's just a service that's sort of plopped down in all of the locations and we expect it to work, because there are some significant variations in the population served and the needs they have and the resources that are available to them.
Thank you.
Thank you for your work, Beth.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for making time for me today.
Thank you. Okay, M, review programming and staffing data.
Okay. So I believe I set this up. So. And if I go like that, I think we'll be good. So today I am going to talk a little bit about branch programming updates. I've talked, this might be my third or fourth presentation about staffing models, which also incorporates programming budget. So we're going to touch a little bit on that. This is a picture of Crystal Valenzuela. She's the librarian at the Ekstrom Columbus Library, doing children's services. So. I wanted to touch really quickly that we had another quarterly workshop, manager all-day workshop, and it was really productive. And a little update about that. We had a visit from Steve. We explored some more professional development articles about co-creating better ways of working together. We had a really in-depth and productive conversation about extra hours and substitute librarians and the phase of that work. We gave them some updates on page hiring, and then managers reviewed and gave feedback for a knowledge-based article that's going to be coming out this month about the staffing models and standards. So it's a really, really productive, good day. We were at the Wilmot Library, which I learned has an exceptional amount of emergency helicopters landing right next to it. Like a wild amount. I was like, who built the landing right by the library? I feel like the library was first. It was a lot. So like 6 of them or something. It was just like wild. Yeah. We've been looking at some stats and we're doing some national reporting. Manissa's been working on some reports there. So I wanted to fill in a little bit on, we got a lot of questions last year about what kind of programming. So we presented 10,000, or we didn't present them. 10,993 programs were presented in the library last year. So that's about, I did very quick rough math at 2 hours, a program, which some are more, some are less. It's 17 hours a week per branch, which is not, every branch is not doing 17 hours worth of programming. It just varies, which doesn't include the planning and prep. And it's about 3 hours of programming presenting a day, which I think is very healthy for, especially considering our staffing levels over 2024. I wanted to start by explaining that we understand things there to be 3 different types of programming. So staff-led and developed programming, so that's story times, create clubs, Lego time, book clubs, etc. That often is a high level of staff planning time. So that's all the preparation that goes into it. We also have paid presenters with the library. Those are yoga times, astronomy, Reed Parks, Due to You, Desert Museum. That's a medium level of staff planning time because there's a budgetary aspect of it. You plan quarterly, you have to do paperwork around it for procurement, things like that. And then we also do things, partner agencies like United Way and Vita Tax Help, our partnerships with Literacy Connects, English language classes. A lot of those are coordinated by Marissa's team and Alina and the folks in community engagement. And those are oftentimes, while they do their partner work, they are low level of staff planning time as far as making space for the long-term in the meeting room, understanding your community and all those things. But they don't take a weekly amount of prep. Here's my little bucket again. Updates on where we are with programming. So again, we've talked a lot about the 3 different areas that most work falls into: service point, administrative, programming. We're talking about programming this time. So, we know not every position in the library focuses on doing programming work. So library associates, librarians, librarian 1s, librarian 2s, a large function of their work is doing programming at the library. So, but some folks whose customer service and more technical aspects of book processing and things like that, administrative work and customer service make up most of the work that they do. So here's the staffing model. Here's like the big zoomed out version. I took a 6-day agency. We've been doing a lot of hiring. This is a very good example of a 6-day agency that I would call high impact. If you notice how many incidents they have in 6 months, that's quite a lot, 119, probably some of the highest. They have total open hours at 46, which is on the higher end. In this particular library, I don't want to call anyone out by name, so it's just like Joe Library, but we've now got their staffing to really manageable levels. They have 14 and a half staff people because we've added at this particular location, I think a couple LAs this month and another librarian 1. So we're very excited about that. And this is how we sort of break down the work, and I'll go through it a little bit. But this whole chart, if we look here, this is the total hours of staffing. It's their service point contributions, their off-desk hours, their admin time, and then we settle on the available programming hours per position. And so then we understand that at the library. So we're at service points. This library is well staffed. I know we're in a deficit here, but understanding that that really accounts to we've given enough staff that we can comfortably give a buffer. And I think somewhere around negative 10 or 15 hours would really account for a substitute librarian kind of picking up those extra hours to make them perfectly staffed throughout the week. They have almost 70 hours a week of leave usage at this library. I think it was 68 hours. So that's how they still have a buffer, even though they have the 14, and they have 184 service point hours that they cover a week based off their usage. Again, it's circulation, it's incidents, and then it's the service points that they manage during the day, like the phone, check-in, and people on the desk. So this is another section that we haven't gotten into before, which calculates how much programming. So accounting for all of that, all of the administrative time, that same tool that we've given to managers, and the library services managers are my teamwork. We have 30 hours a week of program prep. So every library has budget, and that's how we're working off of. So I want people to aim for being in that 30-hour budget. It's a very reasonable amount. It's calculated based off of each position and a standardized model of how much time they should spend each week working on programming, working on administrative work, which is their supervisory tasks, and writing schedules and all the behind the scenes stuff they have to do, and customer service work. So what we're asking for managers. So part of our meeting, why I mentioned it in the beginning, is we wanted feedback on that tool because I see, or that knowledge base article, because I see that knowledge base article as helping them. We're collaborating with them to broadcast administratively what are the standards that we have for the managers, so that we can have kind of a wraparound understanding and staff can know what's expected of them clearly. We're asking them to continue to use the staffing model for planning. And in that article that's coming out this month, we wanted managers to understand that the branch priorities are as follows: service point coverage, then administrative tasks, then programming. We're getting really to a point with staffing where we're much more comfortably staffed than we've been before. We're still not quite working on the math of how many FTE and PCNs outside what we have already, we would need to be fully staffed, but we are very, very close. I understand it to be something like 20 FTE, but please don't. But we've gone through and looked at everything, and we don't have that 20 FTE. That's outside of what we have right now. But that's where we're at with the math on staffing to get everyone up to speed. And of course, we all also, a lot of the work that we did in the managers meeting is to understand like the reciprocal nature of this. So we're asking the managers to make some changes and understand programming and budget that. And we want to broadcast to them, Marisa and I, it was very important for us to broadcast the administrative support that they can receive. So
Can you define for the new folks what the knowledge base article?
so we have an internal intranet. And you can, and we have, basically a bunch of communication tools, and a knowledge base article is just a training document that we put internally. It's genuinely like an article that outlines certain things that we need folks, different procedure changes or policy changes that we want folks to understand the whole communication about. So it's just an internal communication tool. Renee or Holly, do you have another way to describe it, or that?
It's basically like a Wikipedia for
Yeah.
all the policies, practices, procedures that we have in the library.
Intranet.
Intranet, yeah. The staff intranet.
Like I just put one out for the multilingual pay process for staff, so it has all the links, all the steps, everything, so. So like an internal training.
Yeah, it's indexed and you can search and then it'll pop up and.
Like a resource.
Yeah,
It's all tagged.
It's like Wikipedia, but for staff stuff.
Mhm. So we're gonna put out that knowledge base article. I'm gonna follow it by creating a couple Q&A sessions for staff at any level to come and ask questions and learn a little bit more about this process. I've been doing a lot of work with staff that are not on the management team, as we've been getting task force together for our intermittent staffing task force and sub-librarians and things like that. So we've really been integrating, I think, into our work culture, like this is the way that we're doing the work and these are our promises to you around staffing, but this will help them have their own space to talk about it. And then I also wanted to talk about our thank you very much to our friends at the Pima County Public Library, and we use them for a lot of our branch, our paid presenters and things like that, and a lot of our branch budget. So the 25-26 budget for system-wide branch programming is $208,000 thereabouts. And we have a commitment to transparently and equitably distributing that money based on the size of the library, the scope and the need of the community. So libraries of certain size can thereabouts expect to get the same amount of money and things like that. We're just really committed to making sure that everybody feels like they have equal access to their budget. That's pretty much, we're doing so good. I mean, really, that is the end of my presentation on where we're at with programming, but does anyone have any questions?
Did you present this to the managers in July? Is this the same presentation they got, or?
No, with the managers in July, because we've been talking. I've given presentations similar to this on the staffing model tool, but we've genuinely been working on training them on the staffing model tool for a year, I think now. So a lot of the knowledge base article was genuinely giving them the article and then doing some feedback and facilitation exercises. And then we did some other stuff, but they haven't quite had this, but they also get presentations about their budgets and things like that. So they're aware of their budget, they're aware of the programming hours budget and things like that.
What I was wondering was, you're, I guess, a year into the staffing model. I'm just wondering, how do the managers feel about it?
I think that they are beginning to see the way that this is breathing equity into the conversation about staff in a different way. I think when we didn't have a model before, that folks thought that if you said you were not staffed like loudly enough, that's how, the loudest mouth gets fed or something along those lines. And I think
we have a metric.
yeah, and I've been very loudly committed to it. And so sometimes there's a tension with that because I think that folks want more staff or even want to expand the hours of their location or change the hours of their location. And we really, really have to have a commitment to making sure that everyone gets the resources that they need to get their library running and feel comfortable before we then move to an expansion of hours, because that's going to be a second phase, as I think I talked about in June. So I think it's been good, but I've also had candid conversations about it's never, we're not a bottomless resource, so we have to be strategic. But I think in the beginning it was a struggle, but also when I did the staffing model tool, I spent a lot of time with folks who were kind of like scheduling wonks or people that have been in the system for a long time. I shopped it around. So if any of you know, some of you might know Sandy White, for example, she really is this is something that she wanted to do for a really long time. And she tried all kinds of, working with her for many years, she tried all kinds of ways to see like, how can we quantify our time? And so when I was first thinking about these things, I was working a Saturday and I meet with her and we kind of spent the whole day just talking about it. And then when I had figured something out, I showed it to her and we talked about it again. We're like, why doesn't this work? Why, stay curious. And then when I had something figured out that was a rough draft, I brought in a manager, 2 longtime managers, one of whom I knew was adequately staffed and they both were conservative about programming. I just knew that they were good schedulers and they did. And one was in a very short staffed library and one was in like a moderate to okay staffed library. And I went through the whole process and to see if it felt validating to them. Like let's put all of your staff in, let's talk about all the things. And yep, the short-staffed branch looked extremely short-staffed and then moderately. And I think even for the moderately staffed branch, the feedback I got from the manager was, this feels good because I feel like other branches are over-programming and I've actually lost staff because they want to go to a branch where they feel like they can program more. And now I feel like, oh, I was right. Like she basically it was like almost to the hour. She was just really, really good at scheduling. And so she had, when we looked at what she was doing weekly, it was just basically like right in line. So that was kind of our beginning process.
Well, I think this is great to have an objective way of looking at staff. I mean, you'll probably adjust it as time goes by, but at least everybody knows what you're in for.
Exactly. I think we need to make some adjustments for substitute librarians, for example, and how extra hours is just like we need to reconceptualize the concept of branches getting extra hours, which is their part-time staff getting to work a few more than 20 hours and then substitute intermittent positions getting to come in and work some hours. And we've really gotten off track with how that works. So my very first thing was pages because they're intermittent. We had gone so long. So it's like, okay, now we're in the hiring process for pages and phase 2 is sub-librarians and extra hours.
You've built a distribution system now so that it will be done equitably.
Yeah, and I think we're gonna have more of a shared language, so it'll be good. But these things take time, so change is a lot. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any questions?
Do you have any idea how much, if you went to pre-COVID hours back in all the libraries, where you are in relation to that in terms of staffing?
Well, we had, even pre-COVID, we were nowhere near staff for the hours that we were open. And so we struggled. We talked a little bit in our last presentation that I think I wasn't in June because I was on vacation for my birthday. So it must have been May when we had this presentation, because I believe you were at the June meeting. Sundays were a real pain point, was one of the things we talked about, because Sundays is a half day, and we never, during time when the Sundays expansion happened about 20 years ago, we were never, as a library system, we didn't really gain any staff. We gained a number of intermittent librarians. So if you're staffing that half day, that's 32 hours of staff probably. And we were only given like 19 extra hours to cover that. So it's like we started working in this deficit space, and I don't know if we ever quite got out of it. So it's sort of, I don't mean to dodge the question, it's just righting the ship, it's gonna take some time. We still don't have as many pre-COVID PCNs. I think maybe like 40 short or something. Yeah. And we also built 2 libraries since then, so we're still not to that number. And if we were to ask for all those PCNs at once, it would not only be a capacity issue, but it would be very difficult to hire. So it has to be done strategically over time. But
thank you, Anne.
No problem. Thank you.
And under old business, unfinished, new director. If Ms. Meyer is still on the line, is there anything you would like to say?
Hello. Hi, everybody. Thank you for the invitation to be here. I'm really fortunate actually to have attended this particular meeting because these the past two presentations have been so excellent and informative and helpful in terms of my understanding of what everyone is working on. I just want to share that I'm really excited to join you all. And of course, as you can imagine, I'm in the I'm in a sea of cardboard boxes trying to figure out what to give away at this point. So I'm kind of in a state of transition, but I'm just so looking forward to meeting you and making plans just with respect to how to meet everyone most efficiently, because obviously there are so many different people to meet and so many staff, and it's a large system. And I would love any feedback that you can offer about how you think we might do that most effectively, because I'm sure that we'll want to start scheduling that out of the gate. But at any rate, I'm just happy to be able to join you this evening, and very excited to come back to Tucson.
We're excited too.
Yes.
And don't believe any of those things you hear about the weather.
Honestly, if I had a dollar, if I had a dollar for every time somebody looked at me and said, wait, you know how hot it is there, right? As if it was somehow news that had passed me by in the process, I've
It's
kind
a
of
drive.
enjoyed that.
Anyway, we'll be happy to see you next month.
Thank you. I'm going to be happy to be there.
Okay. Other unfinished downtown library, I guess you're doing your due diligence.
Yes, I think I just received an email. Give me 1 second. We're closing, and I'll give you the latest news. It looks like we're closing September, mid-September. Due diligence, we're still in this process of trying to reacquire the bureaus that.
Oh.
No, it's just part of just the ongoing discussion. I think we'll probably end up with them potentially. I just don't know what we'll do with them. Right, so that's another conversation. But so that's ongoing. I know we had someone reach out to us from the neighborhood association here locally, and so attended the meeting yesterday with questions of our neighborhood association here about the library, and I'll let you characterize that meeting.
It was a wonderful meeting. It was their Downtown Resident Association's annual meeting. They got in contact with us. I was able to go with Christine, who's one of the co-managers of Maine Library. She was able to bring a bunch of information about programming at Maine too. I feel like the downtown resident community has always been elusive to us. Like it's like I see them walking around, but it's like trying to figure out. So that was like a really good opportunity. They were really enthusiastic, and we talked about how we're just really in the infancy of the planning process. Like me and one of the librarian twos from Maine are going to be on the panel to pick the consultants the designer, excuse me. And that's like just happening in the fall too. So it's a years long process, but I think we made really good connections for getting feedback from them. So, and I also learned there's 1,000 residences in the downtown area, which doesn't count the Barrios or Emery Park. They're not called downtown, so it's really like the Robert Columbus, and 1,200 residents.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'll just add the one thing that's an area of just we're still trying to figure out is the garage. We're finding out it's part of kind of that historic, all the buildings that are there. So there's some parking space that we have to set aside for folks that are part of the deed that are historic, which was interesting. So I was asking like forever? And the answer is, yeah, forever. There are certain buildings are tied to that garage. I don't know the spaces, so we're trying to figure out. I mean, there's still enough space there, but it's just been interesting to find out some of the historical components that are part of the purchase of that building and the garage. They're tied to the Pioneer and a couple of spots there, and there are like 22 spots that are tied to certain areas. Don't quote me on that, but that's been fascinating, just trying to figure out what that, was like. We're probably gonna keep that operator for the first 2 months. Switch over once we get going, just because it doesn't make sense for us to try to operate it right away until we figure out kind of who's gonna manage it.
And the county also owns the building on the corner, is that right?
That is correct.
Yeah, and that has a long-term lease?
Right now, Tucson Indian Center is actually, using that as a long-term lease agreement, that we own that building, correct?
I'm finished. Thank you. Holly. Communications and publicity.
That's me. Welcome to Scott and Cam. I just wanted to say it's great to have you both here. I hope everyone who knows has affiliated with Little Ones had a great back to school. I did. I hope all of you did. We have, if you have any young learners who are having some feelings about school, we have a lot of really great book lists on the website. There's one called First Day Feelings, Get Ready for Kinder, and then also for older students, books Back to School with Mental Health in Mind, which was created by the Synapse too. So there's really good resources. I also wanted to take a moment and recognize losing 2 musical icons recently, Brian Wilson and Ozzy Osbourne. If you are interested in learning about their lives, their contribution to music, legacy, we also have book lists on our website. We just launched Books Invited to the Cookout. I issued a press release, so you might be familiar with it, but it is an annual publication that is curated by our Kindred team, celebrating books written by Black authors and also highlighting the Black experience and community. It has a variety of genres, fiction, graphic novels, young adult, poetry, all kinds of stuff. And it will be released, it will be an annual publication that looks back in the previous year. So all of these titles were published in 2024. Jessica Pride, who works in our collection development office and is one of the founding members of Kindred, she was interviewed this morning by Arizona Illustrated's Tom McNamara. I don't know when that's coming out, but stay tuned, it should be real soon. I also wanted to give a shout out to one of our librarians, Perry Pyle, who received, this was a couple months ago, but we just did a blog post on the website, so that's why it's in mine, but she received a Drachman Impact Award from the UA College of Landscape Architecture. She worked very closely with 2 professors who had a semester-long project. Kind of the students were asked to look into the history and reimagine the future of Southside neighborhoods, including that surrounding the El Pueblo Center. So Perry was really involved with that, worked with the students and the professors, and she received this award. We're pretty proud of her. And there's a blog on the website, a blog post, a little interview with Perry, if you're interested in learning more. That's me.
This is gorgeous.
I didn't design it. I can't lie. But it is beautiful. That was a Renee original, wasn't it? Really nice. Sometimes Carolina's busy. I have to.
It's gorgeous. Thank you. Marisa.
Oh, yeah. I want to let you know that several people in District 1 told me that they saw the Tucson Sentinel article about tests. And so they're very happy to hear that someone from Berkeley was coming here to be our new county librarian. And also I like the Q&A blog that we did about tests.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
People want to learn more about tests and are reading some recent books that she's read.
I've had to pull off reporters who are clamoring to interview tests. So Yeah, the community's very excited. That's
I
our.
was gonna, ask you about that. I know that like the Daily Star hasn't had anything yet, as far as I know, and neither of the, local TV stations, maybe I don't watch all the TV stations.
For the appointment.
About,
Yeah, I think what we issued the press release and the response that I'm giving is when Tess is on board, we can work together to figure out what's best. The Daily Star wouldn't really report on that necessarily, but maybe do a piece about her once she's on board, as opposed to just, they've got a new director. We also have the Daily Star column that comes out monthly, so Tess and I can work together if she's willing to get something published there. So there's opportunities, but I wanted to give her a chance to get on board and in Tucson. Before flooding her inbox.
Yeah, it's big business. So.
Yeah.
Good.
Thank you.
Marissa.
Yeah, I don't have too much to add other than, just a big thank you to all the staff, some are on my team on community engagement office and also branch staff that worked like for months and months planning the Mega Mania event that will happen in July, on July 19th. We partner every year with the Downtown Campus for PCC. They're a wonderful host for us. Lots of cosplay happening. I had never, it's been years since I've gone. I think I went to the first one for a bit, but it's been years. So I went this year. It was wonderful to see all the ages participating in all the events, author events. There was lots of crafts, presentations. We worked with a lot of the affinity teams to get lots of representation at this Mega Mania specifically. And so many nations team worked really hard, especially Lindsay Curley, one of our wonderful librarians, to do an author presentation with John Proudstar, who's many of you probably know. He's one of our actors. His most recent work is on Reservation Dogs. So he did a wonderful talk with Lindsay. He's a real character. Local, he's here from Tucson, so it was great to have that touch point. And he's just a real great advocate for, I think, libraries and just the work that we're doing. And so it was wonderful to see the community come out and support that. And so we're just really hoping, we're already thinking about next year and what we're going to be doing next year. So just a thank you to the staff. It was a lot of hard work that they put into, and we kind of started really late because of a lot of the transition in our team. So, and they just hit the floor, ground running and got it done. So, yeah.
Thank you. And great activities.
So, hiring pages, working on that, doing a big training at the end of this month for page supervisors, which I don't think we've done before, which is gonna be really great. Working with that team, and thank you to Anthony's team in HR. We've been doing a lot of heavy lifting on hiring and placements, and so that's exciting. Yeah.
Me? Yes. I was waiting, I was like, you can say things, I was like, I don't wanna jump the gun, I'm the chair.
Anthony.
Yeah, no, I don't have much outside of my report unless you guys have questions, but the budget was adopted and approved. We got everything we had asked for in the budget, so a lot of support. As Em alluded to, we got a lot of PCNs and we've been really working to hire rapidly. A lot of pages that we're going through interviews yesterday and today and next week for 3 days. So our team has been hiring a lot of people, a lot of placements, and then just trying to let the dust settle with all the PCNs we've been filling, and then kind of reassess with M staffing tools and see, okay, now where do we strategically start placing other ones? Because we've had a lot of people promote up from the positions as well, which has been great, trying to provide opportunities to our team, to build and grow our team as well. And build here within, but also try to bring people in from outside the organization. I know that we've hired some people that have left the health department from losing grants, so that's been kind of great to hire, well-trained and quality staff that have contributed well to the organization. I think we've had one on our driver staff. We placed one, I think, at South Tucson. So yeah, just overall really a good group of people that we're bringing on.
And has the retention rate changed? Is it more stable?
Yeah, I think we're not losing as many people. Thankfully, at the July 1, we got the 3.6% increase that the board had approved as well. That was supported by our leadership here in the county, which has been great. So we are, I think, are all seeing that in our paychecks right now. But hopefully we continue to have some growth there. Yeah, so the retention, I think, is helping, by creating good culture by having these meetings, talking the same language that Em's talking about with our leadership and having them from the top down, I think will help with that as well.
What's the starting pay for a page now?
I think it's 16 and change, I was gonna say 1650. I think it's
better than.
Did you have a good response to that?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay.
It was over 500 applications.
That's great.
So
great.
I remember there was a time when there were certain like restrictions, like certain age groups that you could, hire for pages. Has that?
We're not using One Stop anymore.
Okay.
Or right now. So the restriction is that they have to be 18 and over, which is unfortunate. But because tends to be turnover with pages because it's an intermittent entry level and people's life circumstances change. This isn't gonna be the end all. We did this big batch hire and then from here on out, we're going to do individual hires for each location. We're gonna be able to breathe some creativity into it once we're through this, like everybody's emergency need this bad. I would love to partner with community workforce development again and do info pages, and I think we're gonna be able to do that again. But for now, it's everyone 18 and over.
Anything else?
No, that's it. That's it for me. Unless you all have questions, any other questions? Happy to answer.
Well,
Thank you.
the only other one is report on state of the library program services library. I think we've kind of covered all that.
Yeah.
Unless there's anything else you want to add or throw in.
I can talk a little bit about the director's report that I helped put together.
Great.
I mean, I can just touch on, we did receive 2 LSTA grants, so thankfully.
Yeah.
We did we were kind of not sure about that for a while, but so one of our grants will, fund one of our writer in residence program that we've been doing for, many years. And then the other one is gonna help hire a consultant to do a community engagement process. And so that'll like tie into strategic planning. It's gonna be general, very general, what does the community need of the library? So really focusing on focus groups, on community forums, making connections with our stakeholders, such as like the neighborhood association down here and many others. We're in the very initial stages of that. We just got the grant, so we're trying to figure out who we'll hire as a consultant and kind of figure out the process. But as we go through that, we'll share that with the board. The other thing that was exciting that finally got rolled out after many months of pilot program and kind of piloting it with different branches, the multilingual pay process.
Oh, yeah.
Was rolled out last month for staff, and so we're getting a good response. I think staff have some, there's real anxiety around test taking because that's part of it, but we're working really hard to try and alleviate some of that. I just had this week a drop-in session for staff so they could come and ask any questions they may have about the process. We're just trying to really create a space where they can talk about their concerns and also try to eliminate all the barriers that come along with the test taking. Anxiety, that's a real thing. But I think it's been really positive. We're super, and I think staff understand that we're just super open to feedback and really trying to work to even change any processes that might not be working for them. I keep saying this isn't a set in stone process, that it's something that can evolve and change as we get feedback. And so, but I think, staff it's a really good morale booster for staff finally. And I'm one of the staff members that, have used my language skills most of my career and was not compensated for it. And so I think, what we can be able to give that benefit is going to be really impactful.
Is that 2-tier system, is that done in other county departments?
It's across, so that 2-tier system is a county
standard
procedure. Yeah, the county procedure that we adhere to. So Yes, but, you know, we did a pilot up to the branches that have a large portion of their staff that, speak Spanish. And so they went through the process and then gave us really candid feedback that we took into account. So because of that feedback, we even kind of, lowered the levels of the test to make it more accessible. I think we're kind of at a very high academic level, which is not what we use on a
Yeah.
day-to-day basis at the, you know, working with the public. So we took that and made some changes and then that's when we rolled it out. So we're excited and hoping that, you know, more staff will take advantage of it. Yeah,
About time.
I know, it's been a long time.
It's so long.
And I have, you know, a lot of LSM, Val, especially, and Alina helped a lot with, you know, helping roll out, so.
It's
Yeah.
the challenge at the federal level and
Oh,
proud of you
yeah.
guys for rolling that out.
And so the next phase for me is, you know, we're focusing on Spanish, but we want to include other languages, obviously, because we have those people in our community from different language groups. So I'm working with hopefully soon working with the Welcome to America team that works with a lot of the refugee and immigrant communities here in Tucson and trying to kind of figure out which new other languages we'll add soon. And then I'm also trying to find a process for ASL as well. Seeing if there's any other county departments that are doing that, or if we have to maybe create our own process, which kind of looks like we will. So those are the other next phases of this.
So how does it work? Basically, if you pass the test, you get a pay raise? So,
There's a level that, you know, they pass the test, they have to pass it within a range. If they pass, there's a reading component and then there's a speaking component, so it's 2 tests. If they pass both of them within the range, they'll get the journey level, which is $1 an hour extra benefit. If they only we prioritize the speaking because that's the skill set that most people use. Although reading it does come in, you know, it is something that we use at the branch level too, but we prioritize the speaking. So if they say they only pass the speaking and don't get at that level in reading, they'll still get the associate level. So it's 50 cents. So, yeah,
pretty good. Yeah.
it's
Better than what it was.
something. Yeah.
That's
so.
great. Yeah, good going. Who does the test? You?
We work with a vendor, it's virtual, so it's kind of this avatar that they do. And you know, they go onto this website, it's a county vendor that we work with, so other departments use it. It's Language Testing International is it's called, and so we have a really good relationship, they're super responsive, like I just call them and like, what's going on with this, and they respond right away, so. We have someone assigned to us specifically to work with any kind of things that come up in the process, and then they don't have ASL because I just asked them that, so I think they're working on that part, but they cover multiple languages and they work with lots of government entities and organizations around the world. And then what's great about this certification is that they can, you know, staff, if they're certified, they can take it to it's kind of a universal almost the for language, so that if they were to leave the county and go to another job or somewhere else around the country in the world, it would still be something that would be valuable.
Yeah.
If you write, you get $1.50.
I think there's writing component too, but we just haven't implemented that part. Yeah. Did I answer your question, Dr.? This is going on, okay?
Yeah, I'm so glad that you're doing it.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, it's such a valuable skill. In my opinion, you should get compensated for it.
For sure.
I'm sorry if you didn't all these years. Somebody should look into that.
There was a process in place, it was just very difficult to get the benefit with the way it was ran, and I think honestly, there was a lot of feedback from library staff around it, and I think that also helped contribute to them revamping the procedure, the county level, so it became more accessible, so.
Yeah, I can attest to that. I worked for the county for a few years and never got that.
Yeah, we actually tried, I mean, we did a test, I remember working at South Tucson where we spoke Spanish all the time and you had to actually count your time. And
Yeah, like a percentage of your day.
we never reached it, even though we used Spanish all day long, so, yeah. So I'm glad it's as much more, it's a benefit that we can reach now, I think.
Okay, other questions? Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll second that.
All those in favor? Any opposed? Very good, we're adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.